Have you ever said something and then within just a few minutes said, I wish I hadn't said that? Well, maybe all of us have been there. I heard about one fellow who said his tongue gets him in trouble a lot. The book of James has something to say about tongues and the trouble using them. In James chapter 1, verse 26, James says, if any man thinks he is religious and doesn't bridle his own tongue, he's deceived himself and his religion is vain. Now that sounds a little strong, doesn't it? I heard of one preacher who said he couldn't preach James because his people would be on the floor bleeding if he did. Well, maybe he worked with a rather tough crowd, because I think we need to read it. Go on over to chapter 3, and there's even more said about the tongue there. James chapter 3, he talks about putting a bit in horses' mouths and making them obey us. How that ships are guided by a rudder, though they are driven by mighty winds. But he's saying that no one controls the tongue. Down in verses 7 and 8, every species of beast and bird and reptile and sea creature has been tamed, but no one can tame the tongue. I want to notice verses 9 and part of 10. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth comes blessings and cursings. He says, brethren, that's not the way it ought to be. So if the Lord wants us to control our tongues, and that seems to be a problem, what ideas have you thought of? What have you thought of that will help you to use your tongue appropriately? As long as I can remember, I've heard, when you're angry, count to 10. Well, that's helpful. My only problem is when I'm angry, I don't want to count to 10. Also, there are several misusages of the tongue that don't have anything to do with anger. What about gossip or just saying something inappropriate? The founder of the Rotary Club came up with a 4-way test. It's copyrighted. You can read it online. But it basically says, be concerned about the other person. That's helpful. I think even more basic, we've got to get down to the point that we get rid of those angry feelings, those negative feelings, those wanting to say something hurtful feelings down inside of us. And we do that by focusing on the Lord's way, by focusing on the positive and bright things, so that when we're jostled, what comes out of us is positive and bright. Perhaps the greatest help that I can name comes from, once again, James chapter 3. The last paragraph, verses 13 down through 18, talk about two different kinds of wisdom. The wisdom that is of the world is full of bitter envy, selfish ambition, boastful, false to the truth. James says such wisdom as that is unspiritual and devilish. And then in verse 17, he says, but the wisdom that is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy, good fruits, without a trace of partiality and hypocrisy, that's what comes from above. And isn't that what you find in the world today? The world seems to admire the guy who wins all the verbal battles. He has sharp retorts and quick returns. Maybe we shouldn't admire that. Maybe we should admire more the guy that's peaceful. He may lose some verbal battles, or maybe he won't get into those battles at all. There's one more positive thought out of this passage. Back in verse 9, that text says, with that tongue we bless the Lord and curse men. Maybe we just need to spend more time using our tongues to bless the Lord. Today, I hope that you can find some positive usages for your tongue. Maybe we can simply bless the Lord more today.